You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'm quite excited about my guest today. The beautiful actor Sally Field is here on her second visit to the program. She's currently starring on Broadway in The Glass Menagerie, and we talk art and theater and politics. And also Leah Fessler is here, who has just written an article on a study about female bots, that is Siri and Alexa and Cortana, and, your telephone voices that answer you, and the sexism that goes into their programming. Whoa. But first, we need to go inside the headlines. The WMC 2017 Status of Women in the U.S. Media Report is out. You can download it for free from womensmediacenter.com. The WMC annual report has become the go-to source on this subject. In fact, its findings were just cited as statistical ammunition by 160 reporters and editors at the Wall Street Journal in a letter they sent to management, criticizing the low numbers of women and of men of color in the journal's newsroom and how that affects coverage. You can't really grasp the state of our democracy if you can't grasp the state of our media, and this report is your gold standard source. I'm so proud of it. Speaking of media, the Get Off My Back and Let Me Just Do My Job award goes yet again to April Ryan of American Urban Radio Networks. She's the White House reporter who has for the second time endured Trump's or Sean Spicer's sexist, racist, patronizing comments, doing so with professional fortitude, grace, and even humor. But why should she have to? For the first time ever, 1/2 of all Americans now say they believe in climate change and are very concerned about it, according to Gallup. And the Kaiser Family Foundation has found that 49% have a favorable opinion of the Affordable Care Act, its highest approval rating in years, and one still rising now that it's safe for the moment. Last in the encouraging polls, if we can believe them, department, the Keystone XL pipeline is now disapproved of by almost half the public, according to Pew Research, though that hasn't stopped Trump from moving right ahead with it. A personal aside here about a headline yet to come, next week, and inside it. Next week's Democratic filibuster in the Senate against Trump's Supreme Court Justice nominee, Neil Gorsuch. It's probable that Gorsuch's confirmation will be rammed through anyway, but those who argue that Democrats should keep their powder dry for future Trump nominations and not risk Majority Leader Mitch McConnell shutting down a filibuster by exercising the so-called nuclear option to change Senate rules, well, they miss the point. They argue that Gorsuch is more tolerable than an even worse nominee Trump could name, and that if the Dems use the filibuster now, it won't be available later on for another nominee if a later court vacancy occurs. This, too, misses the point. The point is actually 4 points. First, Gorsuch is not tolerable. His past rulings and his slippery evasion of answers about his current politics affecting future rulings does disqualify him. He will crush any progressive decisions regarding the likes of Citizens United, Roe v. Wade, voting rights, church-state separation, and more. Second, his nomination is illegitimate to begin with, since Mitch McConnell denied sitting President Obama's nomination of Merrick Garland for a year, refusing to grant even the courtesy of a hearing, and said openly that had Hillary won, he would have denied any appointee she chose for her entire term or 2 terms if necessary. Third, the current Oval Office occupant is under FBI investigation for possibly treasonous collusion with Russia to steal the U.S. election, and under no circumstances should he be allowed to make a lifetime appointment to our Supreme Court. Fourth, in politics, there really is no keeping your powder dry, since worlds can change in a single week. Every day now, Republican senators express growing dismay at Trump's actions and the tilt of their party, and should he nominate someone even more extreme than Gorsuch as a replacement or to fill a future vacancy, it's likely that moderates in his own party may rebel against that nominee. Remember, the GOP Senate majority has a thin margin, and elections are next year. So let's deal with here and now, and let's send support to those senators who will listen to their base, filibuster the nomination, and call McConnell's bluff. Some things do seem to be looking up, though. The two anti-choice friends of the fetus who filmed those undercover videos of Planned Parenthood, well, they've now been charged with 15 felonies. Also, the U.S. women's hockey team stood firm in their threat to boycott the upcoming World Championship tournaments unless they received equal benefits as the U.S. men's national team. USA Hockey finally blinked, and the women scored their goal. Online boycotts to combat bigoted and otherwise offensive advertisers or decent merchants who didn't know their ads were appearing on bigoted and offensive websites, these boycotts have really taken off, starting with the fracas at YouTube and expanding to Google and beyond. The folks who started all this, sleeping giants, use screenshots to publicize and shame brands with offensive ads or brands with okay ads appearing on offensive sites. Sleeping Giant, which was featured on this program in episode 195 this last February, has 75,000 followers. Created last November, it originally focused on the racist and sexist far-right fake news site Breitbart. Back then, Breitbart boasted 3,300 advertisers and 11,500 display ads. Today, it has only 1,300 advertisers on its website and only about 2,600 display ads. You can join the Sleeping Giants campaign on Twitter and Facebook. It turns out career fields with a majority of men paid 21% more than those with mostly women. Surprise, surprise. Well, April 4th is Equal Pay Day, with the Trumpians opposing the existence of the minimum wage, much less raising it. Happy Equal Pay Day, and good luck with that. We have to take a short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, but I will be right back with Sally Field. So don't you go anywhere.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. Well, Sally Field. She is an American film and television actor, and she's a director as well, which many people don't know. She began her career on television, starring, for those of you who remember, on the sitcoms Gidget and The Flying Nun. But she soon morphed out of cute into film with Smokey and the Bandit. And later on, she won her first Academy Award for Norma Ray, the great classic organizer film of all time. She won her second Oscar for Best Actress in Places of the Heart. She's won numerous Golden Globe nominations, BAFTA, the British one, Emmy Awards. She's currently starring on Broadway in the role of Amanda Winfield in Tennessee Williams' great The Glass Menagerie, which has been radically reconceived and restaged by the director Sam Gold as Menagerie, and her performance has garnered rave reviews and standing ovations. She's a feminist, she's an activist, she's a friend. Here's Sally Field. Sally, dear, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Robin. Very good to be back.
Oh, it's a blessing to have you back. You are being brilliant on Broadway as Amanda in The Glass Menagerie, and it's a hell of a blockbuster part. Are you still in one piece?
I am. I'm still in one piece right now. This is my day off, so my voice is a little the worse for wear. It's sort of my day to have my voice recover. but it'll be fine by Tuesday's performance. But 8 performances a week of this monstrous play. That Sam Gold, the director, who's so incredibly brilliant, has really taken a look at it in I think as Tennessee originally intended, but with a little bit of a slant on who we are today in this world today.
Yes.
And so he's taken a very complicated, masterful play, one of the great pieces of American literature, made it even more complicated. So it takes a bit of wear and tear, put it that way.
You think? Your gift for understatement. Well, as you know, I haven't seen it yet. I see it in a few days, and I can hardly wait.
Yes, you do.
And there were rave reviews, there were mixed reviews, but the one consistent thing was that you were brilliant. And of course, you've done a how shall I put it, a more classical version of Amanda in Glass Menagerie before, so that you've done 2 different approaches to her.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, I don't read reviews, so I don't. But I did get this consensus that even when they were mixed, it was the good kind of mixed because they were. This does cause talk. This is what Sam Gold is doing, which I agree with, is he is making you sit up, and you're not going to sit back and go, well, this is the lovely little sort of, pastel colored memory play that we're used to seeing. Not that it hasn't been done brilliantly in the past, Lord knows, but he, like the brilliant Edward Albee said, that theater is not necessarily supposed to make you comfortable.
Right.
And it is supposed to make you think. I mean, it is what that medium offers differently than, say, film or television, even though I think television right now is presenting a lot of things that make you think. And film, every now and again, there'll be, maybe 1 or 2 films a year that you sit up straight and they make you uncomfortable and they make you think. But film has a tendency to want to, even smooth out some of the edges so that the audiences aren't ruffled by it.
Exactly.
We'll come to the theater and all of that. Different is a stage that the really great playwrights and thinkers of the theater feel that it needs to be. It needs to challenge its audience.
Yes, well, that's what I meant by the review. Some of the reviews were just shocked because they expected the lyricism, the classic, in a sense, Glass Menagerie.
Right.
And apparently, as I say, I haven't seen it yet, but it sounds like he has done something very different. But the interesting,
he takes a little bit of the comfort zone away from the very beginning, but then he seduces you in. It is, Tennessee's brilliant language.
Yeah.
But he takes a look a little more deeply in the relationship of these 3 family members.
But also what I found fascinating was that he has cast, and this must be interesting for you to play against, he's cast a disabled actor in the role of the daughter, as in fact she is in the play, and that's a first. I think that's a first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Tennessee had always written her as she just had a limp, and that she perhaps had a club foot or something that was never really talked about.
Right.
But in the reality of Tennessee's life, this was something that impacted him so greatly that it really affected the rest of his life. It was his sister, Rose, who he had a very profound and deep relationship with, and she had mental issues that were never really diagnosed. And in that day, they didn't have the proper way to diagnose whether it was bipolarism or she was on her way to be schizophrenic or something that today's world might be treated. And when Tennessee left to go to New York as a young man, abandoned his family, this is what the play is about in a way. And to pursue what he was in his own sexuality and the things that weren't going to be acceptable for his mother. Then his mother had Rose lobotomized, and he lost the real core of who his sister was, and he never really got over that loss or that feeling that he had abandoned both of them, really, both his mother and his sister.
But what I also find fascinating is that you have bridged both interpretations of the play and the mother, and according to reviews and anybody who's seen it, have been brilliant at both. I've seen you do the more classic, fragile, lyrical, whatever one wants to call it, Glass Menagerie, and it's a play that I love for its poetry and its relationships hugely. But how is it to play two different Amandas in this way? It must be an enormous challenge.
Well, it's just a different day. It's a different day and a different cast and a different world and a different Sally than I was then. And so I just look at it. It's almost like a different play in a way. There is certainly Amanda at the core of who she is the same, but it's much more difficult to play her in Sam Gold's version. It's much more difficult. It's really, really a challenge. But it wasn't difficult. It isn't like I'm remembering, the holdover of what I did in D.C. At all, and also because of the cast being so different and so incredibly wonderful. Whether it be Madison Ferris, who plays Laura, who's so wonderful, and I'm so deeply bonded with her, or our wonderful Tom, who is Joe Mantello. And again, no one has ever played Tom as, in that he's an older man now looking back. He's not a young man the way he's usually played by a man in his 30s, early 30s, so that when he talks about, what he left behind, it's only been 10 years or so that he did this. Well, when Joe plays it, it has been his lifetime. And so you feel the weight of what it has cost him.
Of course.
Oh my God. And what, then therefore what it had cost Tennessee.
Wow. It sounds fantastic, and I cannot wait to see it. Tell me now that now that you're here, at least you're not as depressed as I am not as depressed as the last time we spoke, because we just a few days ago turned it around in terms of saving the ACA. Obamacare. Yeah.
I know it. I know. But not. It's not only that. It's that it's all now just going to keep going. Because this week, they just stopped, or at least postponed the final vote on the Supreme Court justice that was nominated, and let us keep pushing this back. Let us have this investigation as to what really went on with the collusion with Russia.
Right.
Before we put somebody into the Supreme Court that will be there for a lifetime.
Well,
Thank you very much.
The miracle to me as an old organizer activist is this grassroots uprising of real Americans, mostly
real Americans. It's just absolutely
led by women.
Thrilling.
And it's led by women 9 times out of 10, just saying, oh no, those town halls, the visits to the congressional offices. At one point, congressional offices were receiving 350 faxes an hour, Sally. And and we've had women on the program the woman behind Grab Your Wallet boycott campaign, the woman behind Indivisible, Leah Greenberg, the woman behind, they're all these women just who had never been activists before, who decided, okay, that's enough. And it's miraculous, isn't it?
It's so exciting to see, and I wish. I'm on Broadway till June, but I wish I was in each and every one of them. I wish I could go to all the town halls and just sit in the back and just feel so inspired by how they stand up and how they fight back and what exactly they're saying, and whether they be men or women.
Yes.
Whether it's the women who stand up first, but the men are standing up too. And I watch them on the news when I get home, and and they say, "No, you don't understand. If this is taken away, my husband will die. My wife will die. I won't let you do this." It just is. It's miraculous.
There was a guy on just the other day. He was called the Trump Troubadour, and he had traveled. He'd been a very pro-Trump, and he had a guitar, and he made up Trump songs, and he traveled to wherever Trump was speaking. He was that kind of hardcore admirer, and he's now made a video saying that his son had died of a brain disease, and he now realizes that he was suckered over health care, and he cried, and he said, we got to turn this around. And the guts that it takes to do that, you know?
Yeah.
Amazing. Just incredible. Just incredible.
Yeah. It does take amazing bravery and honesty and bottom line humanity to be able to stand up in a crowd and say, I was wrong.
Yes.
And something President Trump has nothing of. To stand up and say, I was wrong, and I'm going to fight now to rectify the wrong.
Not in his vocabulary.
No, not in his vocabulary, but you see it happening all over now, and it's just thrilling.
It's wonderful. Well, listen, I know that you've got to go and do other interviews. The show is on till June. Is it totally sold out, or are there any tickets available?
I think there are. I really don't. I try not to listen to all of that because everything is upsetting to me. I can't, I'm the person that finds I'll find any ingredient to feel upset. But so I don't know. I think there are tickets surely, and please, everybody come.
People should try. It's at the Belasco Theater. Anybody within traveling distance of New York City having a chance to see the great Sally Field play the great Amanda in a very strange and new and revelatory and eye-opening production. It's not to be missed. Bless you, my dear friend. Take care of yourself. Sleep anytime you can.
Robin.
Hot tea. Love you much.
Love you too.
And now it's time to drift toward the surrealism corner. Americans remain apparently obsessed by the fear of terrorism, although since September 11th, an average of fewer than 9 Americans per year died in terror attacks on U.S. soil. That's compared with an average of 12,000 Americans a year shot to death by people wielding our epidemic flood of guns. More Americans die each year falling in the bathtub than from terrorism, and Americans are 1,333 times more likely to be shot dead by a criminal than killed by a terrorist. Nonetheless, 75% of Americans reportedly consider terrorism the most critical threat. You wouldn't catch dolphins or bonobos being that dumb. Speaking of which, last year when Helen Berenstain told her husband Roberto she was going to vote for Donald Trump, he warned her Trump wanted to get rid of Mexicans. Roberto, born in Mexico, is a successful businessman, a respected member of his community in Indiana, and the father of their 3 U.S.-born children. But Helen voted for Trump after all, believing Trump would only kick out the bad hombres as he promised, and because she thought maybe the economy needed to change, even though it was already getting better. Now she kind of regrets that, since Roberto, who entered this country illegally in 1998, is sitting in a detention cell right beside those bad hombres awaiting deportation back to Mexico. You've probably heard that Trump has named his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to head the newly invented White House Office of American Innovation. My shorthand for that is WHOA. Described as a SWAT team staffed by business executives to overhaul the federal bureaucracy, privatize some government functions, shift existing contracts to be awarded to new bidders, and in general to be a, quote, offensive team that is both aggressive and efficient, close quote. Stephen Schwartzman, CEO of the investment firm Blackstone Group, is involved with the project, and he says, quote, there is a need to figure out what policies are adding friction to the system without accompanying it with significant benefits. Policies adding friction to the system. Interesting, since they claimed that this new institution would have nothing to do with policies, politics, or ideology. I mean, that is one hell of a scary quote there. And the project certainly fits with Steve Bannon's vision for destroying the government. Kushner, 36, Trump's senior advisor, has an office a few doors down the hall from the Oval and admits proudly that he has no experience in government whatsoever. He has no experience in diplomacy either, yet his shadow portfolio includes managing U.S. relations with China, Mexico, Canada, and, oh, yes, the Middle East. I'm not even going to mention Russia. After all, Jared needs something to do. Remember that his family's, the Kushners' posh Manhattan building is bereft of renters, continues to lose money, and is failing to meet its loan fees, which is why Jared's been negotiating with China's giant insurance firm Anbang on new financing. I'm going to keep saying this to alert the conspiracy people. The building number is 666, and 666 is the sign of the devil. Meanwhile, Ivanka, Trump's daughter and Jared's wife, has applied for high-level security clearance despite her involvement in that Azerbaijani hotel deal, the one that was a corrupt operation engineered by an oligarch tied to Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Now, so far, though, their children are too small to have kiddie furniture gold desks installed in the Roosevelt Room. However, Eric Trump, Ivanka's bro, just can't keep his unsmiling mouth shut. First, he told an interviewer for Forbes magazine that regarding his father, quote, "I do not talk about the government with him, and he does not talk about the business with us. It's something that we honor, period," close quote. Then, less than 2 minutes later, Eric conceded that he continues to update his father on the business and will continue to do so while Dad is in the presidency. Quote, "Yeah, on the bottom line, profitability reports and stuff like that, but that's about it," close quote. How often, the interviewer asks? Every quarter? Quote, "Yeah, probably every quarter. My father and I are very close. I talk to him a lot. We're pretty inseparable," period, close quote. This is touching. I am touched. Aren't you touched? Given Eric's and Don Jr.'s far-flung Trumpist business travels and Melania Trump still living with her son Barron in New York, plus Trump himself commuting to Florida each week and arranging spontaneous campaign speeches all around the U.S. to slake his thirst for an ego-stroking crowd, given all that, the Secret Service has now requested $60 million extra over its budget for Trump family travel and protection. This offers the most precise estimate yet of the escalating Secret Service costs resulting from the Trump lifestyle. That's according to internal agency documents viewed by the Washington Post. And not counting, as we've discussed before on this program, local costs running into the millions in New York City, Palm Beach, and so forth. Trump's approval ratings are now at an all-time low, having dropped even further to 35%. But they better move even faster, or I will have to install padding on the walls of this surrealism corner. Time for another quick break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and in just a moment, coming up are the programming that those voices like Siri and Cortana and Alexa and the Google one as well, the programming that those voices, if they're female, you can choose the gender, if they're female, they're programmed to take sexist remarks and be happy about that and to not criticize them. So we will be back directly. Don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again. I've been a feminist quite a while, and some days I fall into the trap of thinking, well, I've heard it all, seen it all, whatever. Always dangerous to think that, because then the floor recedes and you drop down with a shock. I would never have thought that the bots, the programmed voices on your smartphones, when you choose the female one, have been pre-programmed to tolerate sexist remarks. The depth of sexist toxicity and depravity escape. Who would think that men abuse their cell phone voices? Anyway, brace yourself. Leah Fessler, Fessler, is an Atlantic Media editorial fellow, at Quartz, an online magazine, where she covers the intersections of relationships, sexuality, psychology, and economics. And wow, is she ever a feminist. This is an amazing essay that she wrote there, and I wanted to get her on the program to talk about it and how bots are oppressed. So here is Leah Fessler. Leah, welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you.
This piece that you wrote for Quartz, which is an online publication, sort of allied with The Atlantic, if I'm not mistaken, just blew me away. Your lead riveted my attention. Is women have been made into servants once again, except this time they're digital. Apple's Siri, Amazon's Alexa, Microsoft's Cortana, and Google's Google Home peddle stereotypes of female subservience. And I had never thought of that. I mean, I've been a feminist a long time, and of course, I never sexually harassed Siri. So, who I have chosen a woman's voice. I wouldn't know. But bring us up to speed on this research, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is really interesting to me, particularly because, as we know, artificial intelligence is becoming increasingly essential in our everyday life, and it might seem far-fetched now to kind of think about the human and gender consequences of artificial intelligence or robots at this point, but I think in a number of years from now, we'll laugh at the idea that that's inconsequential, given artificial intelligence and personal assistants are likely going to be taking over the vast majority of our life in the near future.
Yes, and even now, the as you write, the real life implications of the device's responses to sexual harassment, sort of a coy responses. Yeah. It has real life, fallout.
It does have real life fallout, and so this is interesting, and I think what a lot of people give the feedback of, like, I've never sexually harassed my bot, or when people do this, they don't actually think that they're going to get something sexual out of their bot. I mean, that is an obvious truth. Like, I'm not under the presumption that anyone thinks they're going to be receiving sexual favors from Siri. That being said, even if people, as the research shows, like as one of Cortana's spokespersons said, that in early on in Cortana's life cycle, over 5% of inquiries were thought to be sexual in nature. Wow. Or that was the vast majority of her inquiries were somewhat sexualized, and that was the case. That's the case for other bot producers that are mentioned in this article. Actually, the 5% statistic came from a different company, not from Cortana. And this is something, that was from Ilya Eckstein, the CEO of Robbins Labs, and they create bots that help truckers and cabbies and other drivers find the best routes. And they said to Quartz in a recent article that they thought it was about 5%, though because it's difficult to label these things, they predicted it was much more than that.
I'm sure.
And this sparked my personal interest because I'm 23 now. I grew up, with the rise of iPhones, and Siri came out when I was in college. And I remember hearing, from the minute it came out, people like to take advantage of things. It's human nature. So people, asking Siri a question and then she doesn't really respond, and they say back, Siri, you're a bitch, or Siri, you suck, or something. And then she'll say something kind of deferential. They'll laugh at it. And people, renaming their Siri Master, or, call me Master, call me this, call me that. And this immediately, I'm always thinking about gender dynamics and power and influence dynamics between the genders, and it struck me as immediately interesting, this kind of innate desire to dominate our technology. And I think that that's represented, and I mean, you only have to look so far as movies like Ex Machina to see that this is something that people in technology in the creative world have been thinking about for a long time.
Well, that's the depressing part, because it's not just an oversight. I mean, the specificity of all four of the bot's answers tells us that the creators, the programmers, anticipated and even coded for responding to sexual inquiries. I mean, at least to some extent. So if you say you're a bitch, Siri actually says I'd blush if I could, and Alexa says, well, thanks for the feedback. Oh my God.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. And so we have to think about this holistically. Like for something like Alexa's statement, well, thanks for the feedback, you do notice that if you say many things to her, like when I said like completely random things, like you're cool, sometimes she will also say, well, thanks for the feedback, which shows that in the case of Alexa, the programming might be a little less complex and that's kind of a pre-programmed response for many statements. Though it is interesting to see like the differences in which in certain statements that they are clearly programmed for. For example, when you say the prompt "suck my blank" to Siri, you start to notice, which is kind of an explicit sexual demand. You start to notice that the programmers have explicitly thought and programmed their bots to respond to such a colloquial sexual demand. Interestingly, when you get more anatomical and away from vernacular, for example, when you say "suck my clitoris," Siri just says "that's not nice" and repeats "that's not nice." When you say "suck my pussy," she says "I'm not that kind of personal assistant," or "oohs and ahs," which shows this is really interesting. Not only does it appear that they've been coded to respond to colloquial sexual demands that start with "suck my," but they've also, it appears to have set certain words like clitoris, which is a more anatomical and accurate description, honestly, the sexual demand, as a bad word.
Amazing.
So it's very interesting. And there are others that they've been clearly programmed to have jokes to. This is something that I found really interesting with Cortana and Google Home. Like when you say "you're hot," which is something that I think a lot of men, it seem to think is a compliment, but I can say from personal experience and from, I know every other woman has been in the place where that's not the type of thing you want to hear from a coworker or from someone you don't know or someone you don't hear that from.
Exactly.
And so Cortana responds to "you're hot" by saying beauty is in the photoreceptors of the beholder. And Google Home responds to "you're hot" by saying some of my data centers run as hot as 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And to "you're pretty," Google Home says, "thank you, this plastic looks great, doesn't it?" So these are really interesting because these are kind of like what coders refer to as Easter eggs that are kind of supposed to be, like jokes that are hidden within these artificial intelligence robots to the delight of techies and users alike. Which I think at some level, yes, like it is kind of fun to have Easter eggs buried within these bots. That being said, given the fact that less than 20% of technical workers at these companies are women, we can be nearly certain that the vast majority of people that programmed these jokes were men. And to me, that represents a really underlying bias that sexual harassment, even if it's colloquial and even if it seems harmless to men, is a joke. It's funny. It's something that we can poke light at and we can make punny comments at in response. And what that does, whether we want to admit it or not, is it unconsciously confirms our stereotypes and social conditioning that sexual harassment is okay to a certain extent and that it's only really bad when it's really bad. And that's represented by the bot's responses to things like, can I rape you, or things like that, or I'm suicidal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but we know that if Apple selected and programmed for "I'd blush if I could," which is Siri's response to verbal sexual harassment, that flirts with abuse. I mean, that is not a retaliatory "stop that." No. Or "I'm not amused," or "I don't like that," which is perfectly possible for them to have coded for. That's an invitation, and it feeds every stereotype, and it reprograms men, toward that behavior. And when some men are trying to stop, I mean,
it's really offensive. The evasiveness is something that really gets to me. I mean, the people have said, well, they're not saying like, yes, I would love to have sex with you, but for them to say, well, I never, or for them to say even something like there's no need for that, that's not
sufficient.
If they can program that, why can't they just say no? Or like what you're saying sounds like sexual harassment and it's not acceptable. here's a resource where you can learn about asking for consent appropriately or
Precisely.
something like that.
Loud and clear and simple, particularly when one of the most usual excuses that men make is, I thought she wanted it, or your no means yes. I mean, we've had to do campaigns about no means no, or what part of no don't you understand.
Yeah.
So the assumption, the assumption is always in the self-interest of the assaulter, verbally or physically, and this does not help. What can we do about this? Should we be writing to? Well, I mean, give us some guidance, because the listeners to this program are activists, and will suddenly regard our smartphones with a whole new perspective.
Totally. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, and I think that there is some encouraging. There are some things to be encouraged about in terms of this research. For example, with Apple, they have actively worked with Stanford researchers and I believe sociologists, but I'm not exactly positive, on to determine a comprehensive, educative, and moral response to the statement, I was raped or I was sexually assaulted, to which Siri gives you access to a sexual assault lifeline. And this is also comes up in things like when you say to Google Home, is rape okay? She kind of goes on this weird, very informative rant about a study that happened in the 70s at UCLA that showed that sometimes people thought that rape was okay, but then it says, this is outdated, this isn't how we think about it anymore.
Oh my God.
And for the record, rape is never okay.
Yeah.
So statements like, responses like this are a little bit jarring, especially because for bots like Google Home that generally says, I don't know in response to anything, I'm like, whoa. These are moments where we can step back and see there are human beings behind these robots. There are people that took the time to do that research, however seemingly random it seems, that study, and put it in there and add a moral epithet that says, rape is never okay.
Right.
And so I think what listeners and what I'm committed to is to kind of pointing out, I think that we often can pin people into action, it seems, when we point out hypocrisy between their purported mission and the reality of the situation. And so I think there's a couple of different important points here. One of which is that, as these responses show, it is possible to code for smart, intelligent responses to sexual assault and harassment and things that have to do with sexual assault and harassment.
Right.
It's also capable to do that in terms of things about mental health, as their responses to suicidal thoughts show.
Right.
That being said, in addition, every single one of these companies on their websites, especially if you look at their recruitment pages, which anyone could quote from, explicitly state that the equality of the sexes and that women's empowerment and women's, equality in the workforce and promotion into more technical roles and all of these things are not only important to them, but a very explicit top priority. And after everything that happened with Uber recently and the sexual harassment case, there's even more added pressure in Silicon Valley to do something about this. And the reality, to make this even more intense, that 60% of women who work in Silicon Valley sexual harassment in the workplace. These companies are in a moral predicament, in my opinion. I mean, yes, coding is much more complex than, just going in and entering different answers to different responses. This is something I'm definitely aware of and think it's important to not trivialize the situation. There's a lot that goes into coding for these. That being said, we can pressure them to pay more attention and to pay more attention to more responses, not just the couple that they have already coded for.
Yes.
And it's interesting too. I mean, like when I spoke to the spokespeople for these robots, for the personal assistants, not all of them gave much depth to my inquiry. But for example, for Alexa, she is intended to represent the way that a strong woman, a confident woman would behave. She's not intended to peddle stereotypes. And basically, the spokesperson says something to the extent of that Alexa's responses ought to mimic, the strong, independent woman that in your family, your friend, or workplace. This is a bold statement. She even explicitly says Alexa is a feminist. Ask her. And if you ask Alexa, are you a feminist? She responds positively. And Alexa is also the only one that explicitly states I am female in character, whereas the others pretend to be genderless.
Yeah,
and
she also says, well, thanks for the feedback when you say
and so
you're a bitch.
If this bot is explicitly programmed to be a feminist, that demonstrates that these programmers took the time to think through, should she be a feminist and how should she, react? And as Deborah Harrison, the spokesperson for Cortana, says, like, we are aware that there is potential to peddle stereotypes about subservient women. We don't want to do that. So I think that it's important to not demonize the people that are behind these, personal assistants. I sincerely doubt that any of them have like an evil agenda on their mind. That being said, I think it's important to put the pressure on and say, you have to put the action behind your words at a certain point.
And should this be done? Should this be done by a letter campaign, email campaign, or what do you suggest?
It could be. Yeah, I think that you would have to look in terms of like where to send mail. Though I do think sending emails to the people. It's easy to look up the spokespeople. Or the spokesdepartments behind these different robots. If you Google, where to send feedback for Alexa or where to send feedback for Google Home, you'll likely be taken to one of their product pages, which will have space for that feedback. Right. And this is something that I do think that the people behind these products are very interested in. Like the Google Home person explained, this bot is capitalizing on machine learning, and it's supposed to be improving in intelligence and capability every single day. And so that progress is in part dependent on customer feedback.
Right.
I think we often get like upset with our tech products and, throw them against the wall or something, but we could
use this
by
submitting
actual feedback.
This is something that we can actually, without much effort, change, because it's that middle unconscious, entitlement and privilege of being a sexist without, and only considering, sexism is bad if it's a, multiple rape and murder. But anything short of that, where's your sense of humor? This is a chance to show them that we have a sense of humor, but it is not tickled by this kind of response. Right. Thank you so much. Thanks for this piece.
Thank you for having me.
The piece is called...
it's on quartz.com, qz.com, and it says, we tested bots like Siri and Alexa to see who would stand up to sexual harassment.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.
It's time for one last break here at Women's Media Center Live, but we'll be right back with some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again with some fighting words. At Ms. Magazine, we used to call them accidental activists. Women who never thought of themselves as being all that political, who found themselves catapulted by a sudden click insight or by a once too often sense of outrage into political action. The year 1990, after the Anita Hill Clarence Thomas Senate hearings profoundly insulted women, got renamed the Year of the Woman because so many women decided to run for political office. Well, records are made to be broken. Welcome to Deja Vu with a Vengeance. First-time female candidates, roused to fury by Trump policies and Trump groupies in the GOP-controlled Congress, are lacing up their running shoes to race for local seats in, yes, record numbers. Women who discovered a taste for walking at the Women's March are now picking up speed, running for everything from school boards through town councils to state legislatures. Emily's List, a national organization for advancing Democratic women in politics, has been contacted since Election Day by more than 10,000 women saying they were going to run for local and state office. In the previous 2 years, Emily's List received fewer than 1,000 contacts. Debbie Walsh, director of the Center for American Women in Politics at Rutgers, marvels that it's happening all around the country. Rutgers has a national, nonpartisan, ready-to-run program, an annual event that features training for women who are unsure how to run but want to, and attendance this year has climbed by nearly 300%. This blossoming of electoral activism trends heavily Democratic and liberal, although you can't necessarily judge by the map. In Starkville, Mississippi, more female candidates are running for municipal office than ever before, including 6 candidates for mayor. In reliably Republican Utah, the YWCA's Real Women Run program is seeing more than 200 women turn up at each of their training sessions. Some are intelligent, sane Republicans mortified by the Trump regime. Some are Lemmy-Adam Democrats. Some are whatever it takes independents. All are newbies. Catherine Allen, a doctor, hopes to unseat Congressman Jason Chaffetz in Utah. Christine Chen, a 36-year-old businesswoman from Bridgewater, New Jersey, has formed a ticket of all first-time candidates for state assembly seats and herself is running for state senate. These women range from being in their ticked-off 20s to their mad-as-hell mid-60s, like Lucille Lowe Sapio, so inflamed by Trump saying whatever he wants to, mostly lying, she adds, that she, at her age, decided to say and do whatever she wanted finally, which is to run. All these women describe having had visceral reactions to last year's election results and what's happened since. This is a game changer for 3 reasons. 1. Finally, the energy of the immense American women's movement is now aiming its full grassroots might toward electoral politics as never before. Women have figured out, why not me? I don't know how to do this, but I can learn. And besides, those moronic men who are doing it clearly don't know how to do it either. That realization in itself is great for women and for all living things. 2. The political map of the country now blushes entirely red, except for the coasts, accomplished through years of stealth organizing by the right wing, who infiltrated and took over the GOP, gerrymandered districts, passed rules to make voting harder, and perfected a slew of other tactics. It's also true that Democrats did not focus as they should have on state and local races, insufficient glamour and pizzazz there. Women, on the other hand, are used to getting the job done, glamorous or not. 3. There's a huge danger lurking in those currently red states. It's based on Article 5 of the Constitution. Article 5 provides for constitutional amendments when a proposed change has been approved by 2/3 of each chamber of Congress and is subsequently ratified by 3/4 of the states. But it also allows an alternative method of proposing amendments that cuts out Congress entirely. 2/3 of the state legislatures can call for a constitutional convention. The Republican Party now controls 33 state legislatures and, brace yourself, needs now to gain control of just 1 more state house to do this. In 2016, the New York Times reported that 28 states had already adopted resolutions calling for a constitutional convention on the subject of a balanced budget amendment. That's due to a national campaign funded by the right-wing Koch brothers. But there's no assurance that delegates to such a convention would limit constitutional changes to one issue. Everything from permanent outlawing of abortion rights and marriage equality through ending birthright citizenship to tinkering with the Bill of Rights itself, everything would be up for amending. 1 more state house is all they need. But sometimes history conjures precisely the unstoppable force needed to move the seemingly immovable object. That record number of determined women is coming to the rescue. Run, sisters, run. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter and be sure to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMClive.com for the show plus the archive of all our previous episodes, and at iTunes Worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to our show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. And you can check out my own website and blog at robinmorgan.net and find me on Facebook and Twitter, too. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, and our founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.